Task Force on Aging to order. Are we recording? Yep, we're good. Thank you. There is a quorum present. We have members who are joining us remotely today online. We have a full agenda today, and I'm very excited about the work that we have before us today and the conversations that we are going to be hearing. Our first work today is to approve the minutes from our April 2024 meeting. Is there any discussion to the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor of adopting the minutes from April 2024, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion prevails and the minutes for April 2024 are adopted. Our next item on the agenda is public testimony. Is Nathaniel Olson with us this morning? If you'd please come forward. Welcome to the committee, and when you're ready, if you would please state your name for the record and begin your testimony.
Nathaniel M. Olson, a disability advocate. So, we are looking at the task force enforcing through 2030. Well, I look at this task force and I see nothing for people with mental disabilities. What is going on with that task force? So let me just give you an example of what is going on. If the Department of Human Services doesn't want to uphold the law of what guardianship is and the fact of the matter. I'll give you an example where this is quite concerning, all right? Hennepin County, 110,000 people with disabilities, all goals. The total of people with disabilities in the state of Minnesota is 596,000. Where is the help? My guardian, who works for Scott County, put me in the hospital just because I wanted to have a trip to go to LA. Because she just wanted to put me on a hold. And then she would lie to the doctors and the hospital workers saying I was unwilling to communicate with her. She never sent me an email. The fact of the matter that we have these state guardians that are willing to do that, we need to figure out a bill that can fund guardianship where other people who want to be loved and supported. That is what I'm doing right now, to find a guardian that I can be loved and supported. But the fact of the matter that Minnesota wants to fund all of this stuff and leave the disability people out, that is disappointing. There are people suffering in the state of Minnesota, and there are the disability people that need their voices to be heard, and that is why I'm on the Senate floor here for speaking up. What my guardian did was way too far, and the fact of the matter that she wanted to send me to a mental hospital, away from my family and my friends, the people who care about me, that is sickening and disgusting. And I cannot just stand and watch those people suffer, because I had put all of my time and hours in this. Madam Speaker, I am asking you to work with the legislature, figure out a guardianship plan that I can be happy. The only option right now is to go to Dakota Conservative. That's what Scott County wants to send me to. But they say to me, this is your life, we're here to support you. How is it my life if you have a guardian that's taking stuff away from you? How is it somebody who has a disability that would have a guardian that's taking advantage of them? How does that happen? Because the fact of the matter is, the Department of Human Services doesn't want to tell you what's going on behind closed doors. But they know very well that they can take advantage of a vulnerable adult. We are the ones that are being taken advantage, not them. And they will lie to you because they don't want you to know the truth. But I'm telling you the truth, they do not care. That is the fact of the matter right here. That is what is going on. And I will keep fighting until my voice is heard, that I can find a guardian that can love and support me, because I am getting sick and tired day after day, night after night, waking up and thinking, what is going to happen to me because of this guardian? And that is the major problem that should have been on the task force. That is what should have been happening, not all of this stuff that is bonding together and just push away the disability people. We are Americans too. We are Minnesotans too. And if you don't like it, that's your problem, not ours. We need our voices to be heard. But right now, we're being silent. But that is not going to happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Olson. I greatly appreciate having your voice at the table. Please know that we do hear you, and aging and disability go together, and I understand that not all disabilities are visible, and so I
Exactly.
appreciate hearing from you. Thank you so much.
Madam Speaker, my question is, what is your guys' plan for this task force? What is your guys' plan?
Thank you. I appreciate the question, and that is exactly what we're trying to figure out. And so all of the voices and all of the stories that we are hearing, both in person and online, will inform that plan. And I would encourage you in September to please look at our draft plan as it comes out, and then let us know if it meets the needs that you have as well. So we would welcome that further conversation.
I think the needs that we're looking at is that the Department of Human Services needs to be brought in for front of Congress.
And Mr. Olson, I will say to you that there are several people who have reached out to us about the guardianship issue that you have discussed, and whether it's family guardian, professional guardian, guardianship is being reviewed, and we will be looking into that issue as well.
Okay, because what is happening for my professional guardian is way stepping over the limits of stuff. And the fact of the matter that this is not getting taken, it should have been, if this was the issue in 2020 and 2021, where was the issues that these were brought up? There were 4,600 reports to adult protection services for adult maltreatment. 4,600. If you add that 365 and a day, that's almost 356,000 reports. The fact of the matter is, this cannot just be, okay, let's hold until September. There needs to be issue, because you look at them, they have guardianship immunity and stuff. You look at that bill. That bill should have been on the Senate floor and the House floor and getting passed. They're not above the law. And you're telling me they get guardianship immunity, but we're fighting for our voices to be heard?
Mr. Olson, I appreciate the conversation today, and I will assure you that I will continue to look into the guardianship issue.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Okay, thank you. The next item on our agenda will be to hear from the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce. Mr. O'Neill. Thank you very much for coming today, and I will ask you to please state your name for the record, and when you're ready, if you'd begin your testimony, please.
My name is Sean O'Neill. I'm with the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce, and thank you for the opportunity to present to this task force this morning. So what I wanted to do with my time here is provide an overview of how the Minnesota Chamber Foundation sees this issue of an aging population and an aging workforce within the context of the long-term growth and development of the state's economy. The Minnesota Chamber Foundation published a report in early 2021 called Minnesota 2030. And in that report, we took a look at some of the long-term trends that are shaping the state's economy over time and how Minnesota can think about economic strategies in light of some of these trends. So to start, I want to share some of the findings from this study and then talk about how an aging population and workforce fits into this big picture. So our Minnesota 2030 report tried to kind of characterize what's happening in the state's economy over time. And in that, we really saw that Minnesota's economy should be characterized in two ways. First, that we have a highly developed and advanced economy. And we see that when we look across a broad range of different economic metrics relative to other peer states around the country. Minnesota produces a high value, economic value per person in the workforce. We have high per capita incomes relative to the US average, high productivity levels, GDP per capita. The state also has a hardworking and highly skilled workforce. So we see that in things like having among the highest labor force participation rates of any state in the country. We have structurally lower unemployment rates, whether we're at the top or bottom of a business cycle. And we have a skilled workforce. We have a high share of adults that have a 2-year degree or higher, and we have talented workers across key industry sectors. And that leads into the types of innovations that occur in Minnesota and the types of companies and industries that occur here. Minnesota often ranks in the top 5 to 10 states for most patents produced per capita in the US. We're a hub for corporate headquarters and other leading industries like medical technologies, finance and insurance, manufacturing, food and agriculture. So we have this diverse industry base. At the same time, though we have this highly developed and advanced economy, our economic growth has been slowing over time. So this chart here shows average annual GDP growth rates by decade. As you can see, in the 1980s and 90s, Minnesota's economy grew at a pretty fast rate, over 3% in the 80s, over 4% in the 1990s, but then slowed considerably after that. And not only has our economic growth slowed overall compared to past decades, but our growth relative to the US economy has changed slightly as well. So this chart shows a growth trajectory of Minnesota compared to the United States in GDP growth from the late 70s to the late 90s. And as you can see, Minnesota's economic growth averaged 3.4% annually over that time and grew faster than the US economy. But then after 2000, that flipped. Minnesota's economy not only slowed overall, but we went from growing slightly above the US average to slightly below the US average in that time. Now, in our report, we tried to understand what are some of the factors that are leading to slowing economic growth over time. And one of the durable trends that we point to is a slowdown in the core working age population in Minnesota. This chart shows annual growth rates of people between the ages of 15 and 64. And as you can see, growth in that core working age population peaked just after 2000 and then fell steadily over the next 2 decades, reaching nearly flat levels heading into this decade. And then related to this, as our working age population slowed, our population nearing or reaching retirement age accelerated. So we see that in the share of population over 55 and over 65 increasing in that same time period as we see our working age population growing and our overall economy slowing. One of the impacts that this has had on the state's workforce is a steady decline in the state's labor force participation rates. This is a really important economic measurement that shows the share of adults that are 16 and over that are working or actively looking for work. So adults that are actively participating in the labor force. That labor force participation rate peaked in 2001 and then again fell steadily as that share of our population that was reaching retirement age started becoming a larger share of our overall adult population. So those were trends that we were experiencing heading into this decade. And I want to look now what's happened in Minnesota's economy so far this decade. So the upside has been that Minnesota's economy has proven very resilient in the past few years. This chart shows the state's unemployment rate going back all the way to 1976 when the Bureau of Labor Statistics started collecting these data at the state level. And as you can see, our unemployment rate here in Minnesota spiked to the highest levels on record in the spring of 2020 as we came face to face with the COVID-19 pandemic. Our economy really kind of came to a halt. We had this unprecedented shock to our economy. Our unemployment rate spiked to 11.1% in May of that year. But as you can see, unemployment came back down remarkably fast after that. So we went from having the highest unemployment rate on record in May of 2020 to the lowest unemployment rate in the state's record in the middle of 2022. And we've stayed kind of around that in those historically low unemployment rates since then, being around or below 3%. So that's the upside. The downside has been that as our labor market has become very tight in recent years, it's constrained growth and expansion in the state's economy. And we can see this in the table here as we look at some key economic growth metrics. Minnesota is ranked in the bottom 10 to 15 states nationally in GDP growth and job growth, ranking 36 in each of those, ranking 40th in labor force growth, 31st in population growth. So all of these different factors that measure the rate of expansion and growth in the state's economy have been challenged this decade. Again, a major upside being very low unemployment rates, but having some challenges to growth and expansion. This comes into sharper focus as we look at the number of people in our labor force overall. So a major explanation for why we've experienced slower growth has been that we went from having slow labor force growth heading into this decade to a sudden and sharp decline in the total number of people that were working or looking for work as we, in the first year of the pandemic and in 2020 downturn. Minnesota lost nearly 100,000 people from our workforce in that first year of the pandemic. And as you can see, we've had some recovery since then, but as of April of this year, we still had 34,000 fewer people in our labor force than we had at the beginning of the decade. And I'm sorry for the mistake at the top of the screen there. It should say 34,000, not 38. So there's a couple factors related to this. One has been, as we think about our population growth, one of the components of that is net domestic migration. And this has been a challenge for Minnesota. We've had we've ranked 43rd nationally in net domestic migration this decade, having close to 46,000 more people leaving the state than moving to the state. So that puts a strain on our ability to grow the workforce. But the other factor has been a decline in our labor force participation rate. So it still ranks among the highest in the country, but we went from having around 70% of the adult population that was actively in the labor force between the years of 2014 to early 2020. And then as you see in the chart here, that dropped sharply to 67.7% and hasn't really recovered fully since then. So this is where we get more into this topic of an aging population and how this is impacting our overall workforce growth. This chart and summary to the right is taken from a recent article published by the Department of Employment and Economic Development. And in that article, and the economist the author of this article pointed to three related factors of why Minnesota's labor force hasn't grown this decade. One, again, has been low population growth overall. And then second and third are these related issues of declining labor force participation, particularly among our adult population that's 55 and older. So our labor force participation rates have remained strong for most adults below those age groups. But as you can see in that chart, Minnesota had the sharpest decline in workforce participation rates of that population 55 and older of any of our neighboring states except for Iowa, and a much sharper decline than what the U.S. economy experienced overall. And then on top of that is our age distribution means that we have more adults that are in that retirement age. So really it's accelerating rates of retirement that is the main explanation and cause for why we haven't seen strong growth and recovery in our labor force, and then how that has constrained growth in our economy overall. A related issue to this is what employment looks like for adults as they get closer to retirement age. This chart is taken from an economist with George Mason University, and this is showing national data of the share of self-employed adults by different age group. And what they found is that adults in their 60s and 70s are far more likely than any other age group to be self-employed, to work as independent contractors, as providing either consulting services or working in the gig economy or as freelancers. And so this kind of transition into part-time or short-term work is a really important factor for adults that still are participating in the economy. They're still providing goods and services, but might be doing so outside of a traditional employment model. So I'm not coming here today with concrete strategies or recommendations, but I just want to suggest a couple kind of broad principles to keep in mind. And the first is for employers. And what we hear from companies that we talk to across the state is that businesses are really having to be creative in thinking about how they structure their jobs, what their job descriptions look like, what the actual roles and responsibilities are, thinking about their benefits and scheduling flexibility to adapt to a workforce that includes multiple generations that have different needs and desires of what work looks like for them. So employers need to be thinking creatively about how they can attract and retain talent across a broad spectrum of age demographics in their communities. And then similarly, we want local and state policies to be able to support that kind of flexibility and innovation to take place within the labor market. For policies to not be overly restrictive in determining exactly how employers can structure and try to compete for talent. Again, as these jobs can look really different for people in their 20s versus people in their mid-career or older adults that might be transitioning into part-time or short-term work. So creating a policy environment that is supportive of that kind of flexibility and innovation will remain critical as we have a larger share of adults that are in that phase of their working lives. And I want to end here with a look at the state's long-term economic forecast. As we showed in our Minnesota 2030 report, our overall economic growth is expected to be relatively slow over the next decade, averaging 1.4% annually in our GDP growth, kind of similar to what we've seen over the past 2 decades. And what is a major constraint to this is, again, the expected lack of growth in our labor force. So this means 2 things. One, we need to think creatively as a state of how we beat labor force projections. Our age demographics are what they are. It's going to be a challenge to grow our workforce to the same extent as what we've experienced in past decades. But there are things that we can do to try to accelerate and beat those labor force projections. And then to be thinking also about how productivity growth can improve expansion and health of our overall economy. So those 2 things really need to continue to be set front and center of how we beat labor force projections by really making sure that no one's left on the economic sidelines and that this sense that everyone matters in our economy and providing opportunities for people across a broad range of age demographics to be working, and then to really provide them with the tools to be successful and productive in the workplace. So I'll end there and happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I greatly appreciate hearing from you. So I have just a couple of things, and then I'm going to open it up to the task force members if they have any questions. So just for the general public, could you please explain the difference between the Minnesota Chamber and the Minnesota Chamber Foundation?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I'm sorry. I should have explained that at the beginning. So the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce is a 501c6 organization. We also have a 501c3 foundation that sits alongside the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce. And the Chamber Foundation has a couple primary roles, one of which is to produce reports on the long-term performance of the state's economy. And so we've published a number of reports just in the past few years doing that, including the one that I described today. We also have some diversity, equity, and inclusion programs that we run through our foundation, some leadership programs, and other workforce development activities that we run through that part of the organization.
Thank you. I appreciate that clarification just for the public. So I always think statistics are very interesting, right? Because so correct me if I'm wrong. So we could, if Minnesota has a robust economy compared to our peer states, right, and we are working flat out, and we have low excess labor. It would be natural to assume that our growth rate would be one of the lower because we are already in first place or third place or whatever. Is that correct?
That, I think, is part of it, but what we do also see is that there's other states around the U.S. that also have very tight labor markets, very low unemployment rates,
Yeah.
and high labor force participation rates that are experiencing more robust economic growth than in Minnesota.
Yeah, I'm not complaining about the statistics as you present them. What I'm just trying to say, as we look at statistics, we also have to know the underlying numbers behind them. For example, I would be very interested in hearing from you either by email or however you could present it, exactly where in that labor workforce, if we have it by industry, to see where we could really tailor some workforce measures that would be helpful, right? I don't know if you have that in the foundation's database.
Yeah, so I don't have that in the slide deck today, but the Department of Employment and Economic Development, or DEED, as they're referred to, produces a lot of really good analysis on age distribution by industry, and that's a very important component of this as well, is looking at industries that have a higher share of older workers in those industries, because that might impact some of the strategies involved there. So it's an important part of that overall conversation.
Yeah. And then this will be the last question before I open it up. As we are, it's one thing to say that local and state policies should provide autonomy, right? But it's like, okay, what is that? What is that? What does that look like to you and to your organization? I represent a city that I call the perpetual 42-year-old city, right? People move in when their kids are young, they educate their children there, and then as they become empty nesters, they move out. And one of the things that I have noticed in the 20 years that I have lived in this community, is that it really is hard to maintain what you call traditional employment after the age of 58. And when looking at the data at 58, that you see a definite cliff. And there are many reasons for that. Employees become more expensive, and we all know that humans are the most expensive part of any business, right? Insurance costs begin to rise, and companies that are self-employed begin to shed those costs, right? So there are lots of things that happen. Or a younger workforce member is ready to take on that role at a much less reduced cost for the employer. And I'm not saying that those things are good or bad. I'm just saying it is a fact of economic spreadsheet. So when we look at state and local policies that would both help economic growth and development, but also prepare and have sustainable employment for the individual, I would really welcome hearing from you what type of policies those might be. For example, something that popped into my mind when I was listening to you is, do we move employees off of corporate health insurance at an age and the state take on that responsibility? What does that look like? I mean, there's no free in any of these economies, right? So whether it moves into a shared tax payer-sponsored program, right? And what does that shared cost look like between the employer and the state, right? So I'm looking at all of these alternate funding streams and what would they look like? And I'm just inviting you to dialogue in that conversation, because it is a huge problem that we need to figure out.
I appreciate the question and the comments, the context around that, because I think that those are exactly the right kinds of ways of thinking about the issue. I guess in response to the question, because of my role in the foundation, really looking at the overall economic trends, not getting into the policy recommendations themselves, I'm going to respectfully not provide specific policy recommendations on this, but I do think as we think about our labor regulations and our health policy and other related areas of state policy, thinking about that in light of this context of how do we create space and opportunity for adults that might have different needs and desires of what their employment looks like than other adults that are in their 30s or 40s or 50s, or young adults that are in their teens or 20s, and having really kind of thinking thoroughly about what impact state policies will have on that kind of multi-generational workforce is important. And so again, that's more of a broad principle, and our organization would welcome the opportunity to think more about the concrete policies that could help or hinder this issue. But that's today, that's I think I want to really just emphasize that need for flexibility within our labor regulations.
Thank you. Members of the task force, do you have any questions? Ms. Schneider.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, sir, for your presentation and the statistics, particularly interesting. Just an observation or two. I think sometimes what happens with the retired folks who may be interested in working post-retirement is that they get kind of stereotyped into the greeter at Walmart concept. And I dislike that very much. It's very ageist, and I think we need to do a better job in terms of deciding what kind of public-facing information we'd like to put out about those jobs and roles that would be conducive to a retired person who still wants to continue, but not quite as blatant as what I just described. The other thing that's interesting to me is your third bullet point here on your last slide where you talk about self-employment strategies. I think there's merit there, and I have more and more friends and colleagues all the time who talk to me about their Etsy careers and their small businesses. If we were able to do some work with our banking institutions, because what happens is someone who is applying for a small loan, a relatively small loan at age 60, may not get the same sort of service as someone who is in their mid-30s, for example. So again, I see that thread of ageism through some of these things, and I'm looking for ways that we could ease that so this possibility of working after retirement was more available and more potentially applicable to more people. Thank you.
Right. A couple of just quick responses to that. I really appreciate those comments. And the first part of your comment, I think, is very important, that as we think about the skill sets in our older adult workforce, this is a highly educated segment of our population. And oftentimes, as older adults are transitioning toward retirement, they come with a lot of skill and experience at a high level. And there's one business that I met with a couple of years ago, an engineering firm, that one of their strategies has been to be able to leverage this part of the workforce and place people in engineering roles that don't want to work full time, but they have a client that needs an experienced engineer on site to help with some project work, and they can help place people into those projects that might only want to be doing it on a short-term basis for a month or two, but that they can't easily be replaced by somebody else that doesn't have that same experience and skill set. So this is a skilled part of our workforce, and I think that's an important thing to keep in mind. And in terms of self-employment, I see this in a couple respects. One is we don't want to have we want to be careful to not overly restrict independent contracting, because that's how a lot of adults in this part of our population are kind of blending the lines between work and owning their own business. And a lot of adults in this part of their life actually start their own business. And we often think of entrepreneurship as something that people do earlier in their life, and the data actually shows that entrepreneurship happens a lot for older adults, and that they can actually be more statistically more likely to have a successful business if they start it when they're in their 50s or 60s. So entrepreneurship is kind of part of this. And as people that want some of this part-time or flexible work, they often will work with a small business or a startup, an early stage company that isn't bringing them on as a full-time employee, but needs their kind of experience and skill sets to help them grow and scale their business. So there's some kind of circular aspects of entrepreneurship in this conversation.
Any follow-up, Ms. Schneider?
No, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Representative Zalesnikar online.
Hi, thank you. And thank you for the information today. I'm just going to make a comment, and I wanted your feedback on the group of retirees that are, 65 and older, that 55 plus those that retire at that age are in one camp, and many of them do the entrepreneur, and I've known many of them that have done businesses and work part-time and all the independent contractors, and many of them even take other jobs and work on salaries and hourly jobs. But for the group of people that I receive feedback from that are 65 and older on Social Security, one of the comments I hear from many people when I'm in district throughout the state is that as the hourly wages have went up for retired seniors, in order to keep their Social Security, they're capped at how much they can make a month, and I believe it's I think it's $1,800 a month. It's right around there. And so if it's $20 an hour now at multiple places for the hourly rate, you can just do the straight math. They can work 8-hour shifts 12 days a month now. And so that's literally half of the calendar year. They want to work more hours. And many of them tell me that they want to make more hours. They want to work more hours because they need to work more hours to pay their property taxes or just food costs and the basic living expenses or being able to travel to see grandkids and do fun things. And so many of them are saying, look, that cap is prohibiting us from picking up shifts and contributing to the economy. We want to work. My own mother's 75 and works. So I wonder what we can do for that. That is likely a federal issue, but I wonder your perspective on that, because the basic straight econ side of me can see, and I love math, but it's great that the wages are going up, but we have caps, and it means the people on medical assistance can only work X amount of hours. They work less days because the caps they just can't, their earning caps stay the same. And if the hourly rate goes up, you just work less shifts. And so I feel like that's hurting the economy. And I hear that from a lot of seniors that they want to be able to contribute more. And I'd love your feedback on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Mr. O'Neill.
Thanks for the question. That's not an issue that I have investigated personally, so I'm afraid I can't kind of speak in detail to that. But thinking about the impacts of different public programs on thinking about those benefit cliffs or where eligibility lines might impact their ability to work more hours or take a different job is really a critical factor in this as well. So I recognize the importance. I'm afraid I don't have kind of specific information to bring up related to the Social Security issue here.
And Senator Housley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a question for the testifier in the chamber. What is the chamber's perspective on how the unfunded mandates like paid family medical leave and sick and safe and other tax increases on our businesses, how does that hinder our businesses from hiring the aging Minnesotans?
Mr. O'Neill.
Again, because of my role in the foundation, I'm not going to speak too much in detail about specific policies, but again, to the extent that that some of the labor mandates do provide less flexibility for employers to structure their jobs, their benefits toward a diverse population across different age groups that have different kinds of employment needs and desires. I think that that's a concern to really be looking thoroughly at. In maintaining that kind of flexibility in our labor market, we do want policymakers to be thinking about how those labor mandates play into that, and that should be weighed in the consideration of kind of the cost and the benefits of those policies. So I'll leave it at that level, but we certainly kind of share that concern.
Thank you, Chair.
Did you have a follow-up, Senator Housley, or is that it?
That's it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Dr. Gogler.
Thank you so much for the very informative presentation. I really appreciate it. And I had two thoughts and I guess a question related to that is number one, I realize your position and you may not be able to provide this insight, but I think it would be incredible, not just for the task force and our objectives, but I think in general, to identify what have been some of these innovative novel models working either in Minnesota or beyond that have indeed been able to capitalize on or with older people in their community. What have been some innovative novel ways that has worked in a sustainable fashion that we could build recommendations around. I think that would be a constructive way for us to develop some of our own recommendations. And the only other thing I was curious about is you had mentioned you had some, I believe, some inclusivity training, and you had discussed that as part of the chamber's work. Was there any training on ageism as part of that work? Just out of curiosity.
Mr. O'Neill.
Yeah, age demographics is one of the elements of diversity that we do focus on as we help employers with DEI strategies within their company and being able to attract and retain talent across a diverse population. So age is a very critical important of that. It's one of the elements of diversity in our population and in our workforce. And so we do provide training and services to employers to help them think about hiring and retention across different age groups. I'm sorry. Oh, you had asked about examples of some of the innovative practices that we see from employers. One is we'd be happy to provide more examples through whatever mechanisms are available to do that to this task force. Just a couple that I can share here is one, the example that I described before, the engineering company that as they had employees that were retiring, they offered to kind of keep them on the list to do some project-based consulting work where they'd be on site at a client's business to be providing services instead of just retiring. That was a way of kind of keeping them involved, being able to serve their clients, and being creative on how they made that happen. Another more common thing that we see, and it's simple but it's impactful, is just schedule flexibility. A lot of employers have become more flexible with the schedule of their jobs to be able to employ not just older adults, but maybe it's parents that have school-age kids and they can't do an 8 to 5, but they could do a 9 to 3 shift. And so being more flexible in those types of shifts have been one of the ways that companies have kind of rethought some of their longstanding hiring and job practices to be able to cast a wider net and be able to employ a broader set of their local communities. So again, it's a simple but impactful way that employers are responding to that need.
So again, I mean, I think for our purposes, I think for the state's purposes, compiling these examples would be very helpful. I mean, unless members of the task force disagree. From my perspective, I would very much like to learn more about what some of these approaches have been. I think there might have been, I'm sorry, Chairman.
No, I was going to say, I think it's a great idea. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I maybe like some of you are the same. I'll use a personal example. So my mother, very skilled in crafts and everything. She had no idea what Etsy was or anything like that, but my sister helped her figure out how to use Etsy to basically put online like a big floral pot combination that my mom made. My mom also used to work at Home Depot in like the gardening section, and so she did that, and she made a fair amount of money. And I think, you know, the opportunities of this intergenerational use of technology to again capitalize on the wisdom, experience, skills of many of the older people in Minnesota, I think to me is a theme hopefully we can return to as a task force in our recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gogler, and I think that's a really good space for us to kind of conclude this conversation. We did have a comment from the public that ageism is real in Minnesota, and many workers are pushed out as they age, and they're replaced by younger, cheaper workers. And this individual would encourage the foundation to look into that. It's something that I've heard about in my own legislative work. It's a reality. I mean, we are seeing the homeless population grow at 65 plus due to that lack of certain stable employment and compensation. So it is something that we need to address together. And I think capturing this wisdom, experience, and knowledge in the light of the benefits that older Minnesotans bring to our economy and the opportunities that they provide for a strong, stable economy. The fact that we have fewer people in the younger category today is really forcing us to rethink aging in Minnesota. And it's forcing us to really say no one in this economy is disposable, right? And everybody has something to contribute, whether it was to the earlier conversation about how do we help people with disabilities? How do we help people with aging? These are all great opportunities for our state to face together, and I thank you for your testimony today.
Thank you so much.
Next, we will have a presentation on older adults in the workforce and age-inclusive management strategies. And with us today, we have Dr. Caskey from the University of Iowa. So not only are we intergenerational, but we're interstate on this task force. When you're ready, if you'll begin your testimony. State your name for the record and begin your testimony.
Liesl. Hi, my name is Brian Caskey. I'm a professor of health policy at the University of Iowa. Okay, thank you. First off, what a great presentation ahead of me there. I appreciate that. You set me up quite well with a lot of your facts and figures, and more importantly, for the discussion we can have about the aging workforce. My work has been supported by a number of foundations over the years. Most recently, we're being funded by the Retirement Research Foundation, Transamerica Institute for Retirement Studies, affiliated with Transamerica Financial. I've been supported by TIAA, states of Colorado, Iowa, Illinois, and AARP. All of these organizations are very interested in this topic, and they've been supporting our work here for about 10 years now. What I want to do today is go over some highlighted points. We know that population is aging. What we really need to embrace is putting a focus on employers and employers and what they can do with our aging workforce. We'll talk about what we've actually done with the AIMS Age Inclusive Management Strategies project. We now have a lean certified process that we bring employers through to move them from what we call awareness, activation, and finally adoption of programs and policies, i.e. the AAA. This crowd, I don't need to spend too much time on these slides, hopefully. Population's aging. This is fundamental knowledge to people in this room, but it's not fundamental knowledge to people who work in HR or lead employment organizations. I show them a slide like this that depicts a rural county we worked in Colorado. These are very similar slides to what you'll find in rural Minnesota and rural Iowa. We have some counties where the population is already persons over 65, representing up to 40% of the county population. HR strategies still rely on looking at high school students and those who don't attend college as career pathways for LPNs, certified aides, service industry workers, all of that. Now, the issue here is that those folks aren't there anymore. So to devise an HR recruitment strategy where you're looking at a population that's simply under the age of 55 and that's it, because for whatever reason you believe they're going to be better than an older workforce, that just doesn't work anymore. This is a slide that shows where the growth of the labor population is. It's in people over the age 55. Now, the three big contextual points I want to bring to this is one, older persons should be given the opportunity to choose to continue working if they want to. Some of us find work engaging. We like it because it's socialization. It gives us meaning and purpose. I like my work. I'd like to continue it. However, I'd like to make some adjustments. I don't want to work 40 hours, 9 to 5 all day. Can we talk about that? Second point, unfortunately, most persons, those over the age of 60 right now, recent surveys suggest 2 out of 3 do not have sufficient savings to make it through their retirement years. One of the interesting negative externalities of all the great healthcare and medical services we've provided over the last 50 years is that life expectancy, quality of life has expanded. Persons born today in the year 2000 should plan to live for 100 years. That's saying a lot. That's 10 to 15 extra years in your life course that you have been given. And most of us in the baby boom, Gen X generation, we haven't thought about that. Oops. And so we have this extra 15, 20 years now where we're going to need to figure out something other than just drawing Social Security, because it's not going to be enough. And last big contextual issue is there's nobody coming to save us. Birth rates are plummeting, immigration rates are being restrained. The usual HR approach to replace their workforce, which relies on a pyramid, i.e. more younger people than older people, that's not there anymore. Those are 3 big points that I hope this group, it sounds like, is embracing very seriously, because they are big points. The second issue I want to do today is draw your attention away from the good work. It is good work being done by folks at AARP, by folks in the State Department on Aging that focuses on older persons and persons with disabilities. We have great programs out there that help older adults brush up their resumes, get them on skills to have them work in the modern office place, even have opportunities for them to have job placement services. Our issue is employers aren't thinking about them. So as many of us might be prepared to go back in the workplace, return to work, try to continue working, try to have a conversation about extending our careers, it's not being taken up by the employers themselves. The leaders of organizations and the HR directors polled NIST like this, and we test this, okay? Typical one, you present a resume, identical records on everything, okay? We've done this with gender, we've done this with race, right? Male versus female, approaches someone with the same identical resume for a job, male gets preference depending on the job. Same identical resumes presented to HR persons, birth date 1995, birth date 1975. Guess who gets picked? Okay? Those are myths that are making it difficult for older persons to continue working or return to work. Do they lead to age discrimination? It's been increasingly hard to prove that. There was a Supreme Court decision a little over a dozen years ago that makes this more difficult to actually prove in a court of law, but to acknowledge our representative's suggestion, it's out there. We just finished a survey conducted by Trans-America Center for Retirement Studies. Over 2,000 employers responded. We asked them, what is the age that's too old for you to consider somebody for a position? 60. Okay, so I'm looking around the room. Yeah, this is rough because I'm getting to that number too. So to think that we're not even being considered by HR as viable hires or persons that we want to continue working is a big statement. Given how many older persons are out there, given their motivation to work, given their need to work, And most importantly, they're productive workers. These myths about they get more sick, they cost more money, again, not necessarily supported by the research. So our project, thank you for setting this up, is we pivoted. We're thinking about age inclusivity. One of the things we saw in the Transamerica study back when we did the survey of employers a few years ago, 80%, 4 out of 5 of employers that have gone so far to establish a diversity and equity inclusion platform have gone so far to hire a person, have gone so far as to require or suggest that people offer email signatures and other supportive indications that they are behind diversity, equity, inclusion in their workplace. They don't include older adults or aging. Huh? So they've gone to all this effort to create a DEI platform, but they forgot that gray stripe. They forgot to think about putting pictures of older persons. We just had this testimony from someone at a university in Iowa. Yeah, we're age inclusive, we're diverse, we embrace equity and inclusion. They went and looked at their website and they realized they had no pictures of persons over 25. Wait a minute. Then they looked at their student enrollment and found a lot of their students, a decent number, were actually over the age of 25, yet they weren't being represented in the public-facing materials. That's an example of trying to change awareness and change attitude. So what we did a while back is we went and surveyed. We went and asked employers out in the state of Colorado, which by now is actually taking on the role as the most gray state or the rapidly aging state in the country. So this is a hot issue for them as well. So we asked these employers, what are you doing? And we came up with a list of 40 different things. Now, if you look at over these, about 20 of them or so are what we call age inclusive. Everybody benefits from blue shots. Everybody benefits from supportive training and employee education. So not just for older persons, but for everybody. Then there are age-specific things. You can create retirement pathways where people can formally apply to move from a full-time position to a part-time, seasonal, or other type of phase-out. Right now, for example, we found in our studies of universities, those sorts of retirement offerings or off-ramps, those are all done at the discretion of the unit manager. So if your boss likes you, they'll figure out a way to keep you around, keep your office, and you only have to work a couple days a week. Other folks, we don't have any policies, we can't support you. That's a form of selective, what we might call discrimination. You have to change that. So what do we do at Ames? First thing we did, like all good academics, we created a website. Yeah, okay, we made one for Colorado, we made one for Iowa, and we've made one from Illinois, and we put all this information out there. You know, come here, learn how not to be ageist. Come here, learn how the value of older employees is worth supporting. Come here, learn how you can recruit and retain people. How can you extend their retirement years? All these things. Nobody came. We built the website, nobody came. So we were pretty disgruntled. So then we went to the next phase. We received more money from a group in Colorado to say, okay, we like what you're doing. How can we get employers to actually uptake this? So that's where we engaged in this management process. We go out and actively engage employers that want to do something. They have an intuitive notion. In fact, our research, it says the employers that are most likely to move in this direction, there's an individual, someone like you sitting in this room who works in leadership who said, yeah, we got to do something about this. They had some sort of training or some sort of age sensitivity to them that made them different from the other employers who said, we don't need to think about this. And this is typical in what we call an innovation curve, right? The leading edge of new industry that adopts something, there's always something that makes those first 10, 20% of employers different. And so that's what we found. People like you who recognize this as an issue and then realize there are discrete steps we can take to change your employer about how you work with older persons. So what we have folks do now is go through a series of self-assessments. Is my company doing these things? Do we have a presentation on our website that suggests we would hire older persons? Do we create retirement pathways? What about providing caregiver support? Do we help persons who have to not just take care of their children and infants, But do we have any support for them when they have to take care of a parent who just came home from surgery? We go through a whole list, people check this off, and then we have another consultation meeting, borrowing heavily from the Colorado culture here. Okay, this was a moment we had, actually, with one of our employers. And by the way, for the person who's concerned about Walmart greeters being our only option, this guy ran something called Space Camp. I love this. This is a guy up in the mountains. He's, you know, in the winter, he works the ski trade. But in the summer, him and his colleagues have a grant with the state of Colorado to provide space camp to children in the elementary schools up and down their frontier, Denver, Colorado Springs, et cetera. Problem was, especially post-COVID, couldn't find younger people to fill space camp positions. Now, it wasn't because the younger people were lazy or they wanted more money. They just weren't there. Remember that fundamental premise. They're not there in the same degree they were 20 years ago. So I said, what about employing the older guys in your community? Never thought of it. So we started walking him through a process of, okay, let's analyze. What's your strategy? What are your attitudes? And he talked about, boy, there's so much going on here. It reminds me when I come to the mountain in the morning, I just don't get on the chairlift and go to the most difficult, ski hill to try to resolve these issues of benefit payments. Take me to a bunny hill. Take me to something straight up I could do that's pretty simple. Once I start get going on this, then I'll go through and take on more challenging or more involved transformations in my workplace. So this process does that. The first thing we do is we onboard you. You do these self-assessments. We come back a few weeks later. We say, okay, of all the things you saw, what excited you the most? What would you like to do? Let's start with that. And then we continue to bring these people through for up to a 6-month period. Now, what's great about it is it's all free. We realize the typical HR consulting model, which is me coming to your firm and saying, pay me $5,000 and I'll tell you the secrets of working with an aging workforce, that just doesn't work. It doesn't work with a lot of employers of older persons because most of those employers are shops with under 500 employees. They don't have dedicated budgets to travel to conferences. They can't hire Mercer or Accenture to come in and give them professional consulting. They just need our help. So we're able to offer them that help for free because, again, those foundations I referred to at the beginning have invested in this and they see a big value in what we're doing. So, pause for questions, but I'll wait till the end to keep our time moving. Give you a quick set of examples. Dr. Gogler mentioned, let's see how this works. I'll give you a couple tales, individual tales of what we've discovered in Colorado, Iowa, and Illinois. First is DEI efforts, okay? Do you have a statement that includes age and aging and not more than just a statement? Show me on your website, show me in your manual, show me in how you write your materials to attract people to your employment that suggests that you're age friendly. Easiest place to start, are you an AARP job pledge? Do you have a sign on your door that says, hey, if you're older, if you're over 50, you're welcome to apply here. We will consider your resume. It's pretty straightforward, not too hard to do. Next thing we worked with, this was a fun one. This was a landscaping company in Fort Collins. He said, I love the guys who work for me who are over 50. If I could have another crew of them, I'd love it. Because the younger guys, I can't rely on. Magically, every Thursday, I get these calls from them. They have the flu. They know they're going to come back on Monday for some reason. And then I started putting it together. Wait a minute. It snowed this week. Oh, right. They're taking off for the mountains, leaving me in a lurch. My older employees don't do that to me. That was his fundamental aha moment for us. Then we looked at how he wrote his job descriptions. Remember, this is just a regular guy, a business owner. He doesn't attend meetings like this. He doesn't think about this stuff. And when we saw this top of line saying landscaper wanted, right? I don't know about the rest of you, but I get sore mowing my lawn now. So when I think about what I did as a 22-year-old landscaper, lifting 80-pound bags, digging post holes, there's no way I wanted that. He goes, yeah, but that's not the job. I said, well, let's talk about it. After a little while, we learned that we're outside pretty much all the day in Colorado, which is not a bad thing. I can start whenever I want, 6 or 9 o'clock in the morning, I can take a break at lunch if I need to go home and attend to my mom or my spouse. All these things he never thought about, which are top of mind for older employees, he then put into his job ads. And then the second thing he did, he started moving away from using LinkedIn to other sources. Those of you here I saw were affiliated with the age-friendly movement. There's senior centers, there's your department on age. There's lots of vehicles to communicate with older persons. These employers didn't know about them. That's the connection we're making here. It gets a little borrowing from Colorado again. Now we're moving into the moguls, a little more difficult. We come up with recruitment strategies. Denver Art Museum, post-COVID, right? Think about it. All the museums had to shut down completely, rehire their entire staff. When they went to do that, they didn't change their process. They were using the same old approaches. They weren't filling jobs. They wondered why. Younger people aren't there. What are you doing to make this attractive to an older applicant? That's when we started talking about, well, why don't we split the job? Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday. All of a sudden, they're starting to get more applications from guess who? Older persons who want to stay in the workforce, but they don't want to be stuck in a 9-to-5 gig. Other things we've done is caregiving is a big one. We're starting to see more and more support for elder caregiving. A great example of why you want to focus on institutions or employers is the University of Iowa. Go Hawks. Now, why do I say that? We have a local area agency on aging. They've been working very hard to get persons trained up who are caregivers, who are also working jobs. It's very hard, right? During COVID, we were given this horrible choice of continue working full-time or going home and taking care of a family member. There was little room for in between. Now we're talking about that in between. What can we do for an employee who has caregiving responsibilities for an older person? Those questions are now becoming more formal, and the approaches that we can take to support them are also being, at both policy and at the employer level, are being implemented as programs. We can have at Iowa once a semester, we offer education for caregiving now. If you have a caregiving issue and you need time off to go visit your parents, we'll arrange for remote work. Okay, some companies now are extending 12-week of extended pay for elder caregiving. These are all starting to happen, but we recognize these take a little bit more initiative, right? Lots of committees you have to go through, lots of review. Somebody in your company is inevitably going to say, well, this is going to cost us more money. Well, yeah, it could, but let's talk about all the lost employees you've had. Let's talk about retraining new employees, the time you spend trying to bring new employees on. In the end, it's a net benefit to start moving in this direction. What we find as employers, this is based on our Iowa sample we just got through last year. We had about 30 employers do this, all sorts, franchises like Chick-fil-A. We have hospitals, we have schools, we have a manufacturing firm, makes rifle scopes. All these companies have come out of the woodwork and asked us to help them do this. Most of them take what we call weekend crews, pretty easy. Let's change some job descriptions. Let's talk about new strategies to recruit people. Let's take the AARP pledge. That's good enough. We like it. Got us what we needed. We got more high quality applications. The other half, they're going deeper. They're thinking about, well, let me interview my employees. Let me ask them about what they want to do in retirement. Should I plan for them to move from a full-time to a phase-out? One of the things we learned at University of Iowa, we got a hold of all the data that they had for their kind of go-to retirement policy, which was to pay 2-for-1. Hey, if you retire next year, we'll give you 2 years worth of salary. For whatever reason, 10 years ago, they thought this was a good strategy, right? Because it was a strategy they learned back in college in the 90s. Because back then you were worried about, let's kill that. They were worried about having too many older people, but they didn't change the policy. Oops. We found that they were paying out these people who were going to retire anyway. They just gave them an extra year's salary. The people that they wanted to move on, the stereotypical, professors who don't do anything, I don't know any myself, but they're out there, okay? They didn't move. They didn't engage them properly. So we had to start thinking of new strategies to say, okay, if you're gonna have people working here, let's not just push them out. Let's think about ways to generally phase them out. After 5 years of work, all the committees we had at the university, our Board of Regents have now approved formal caregiving support policies, formal workplace exit policies. It's no more left to the discretion of individual unit directors. This is a big step forward. So why am I here? We are now ready with our Ames project to go to the next phase. We've kind of figured it out. We know what needs to be taught. We know it's not just awareness. I appreciate the age-friendly movements, the change in the narrative. That's just the start. Changing people's attitudes is just the start. We come in and bring you through these other steps. Now, based on our achievements in Colorado, Iowa, Illinois, we're now talking with an organization that was willing to fund us to the next level, which is to create a standard approach to a learning management system where you all can plug in and walk your company through a process that leads you to adopt an age-inclusive management strategy. Now, why am I here? What we're looking for are partners, organizational partners or professional parent organizations that would be willing to host us, come into your state, and you introduce us to employers that want to go through this process. Trust me, when I send an email as the guy from the University of Iowa, I don't get a lot of response. Okay, I'll throw in a Caitlin Clark reference a little bit, that gets me somewhere, but most times I don't get enough back to get employers engaged. But if I work with the Chamber of Commerce, we were meeting with the YMCA in Chicago, their corporate headquarters, okay? We take this system to them. They do all the training internally. They offer the training to their employers at the local level. You bring us 5, 10 employers, plug them into our management system. That's our goal for our next proposal. So if there's anybody in the room, including the state of Minnesota, because we have been funded by state governments, because they see a huge value to this. That's what we're willing to do for you all, and I appreciate you having me here today.
Dr. Caskey, meet Mr. O'Neill. Mr. O'Neill, meet Dr. Caskey. I do appreciate this, and I also serve as the chair of state and local government, and state recruitment and retention is one of the things that I'm very much focused on, so possibly you and I can have a further conversation in that other capacity as well.
Oh, that'd be terrific.
And I would be happy to make some introductions into this idea. And I think what you said really struck home for me. Age-friendly is an attitude shift, and we have to, it's not about being friendly, this is people's homes, right? We're talking about where they live, where they grow, where they can thrive, and presenting those opportunities. And every Minnesotan has the right to feel included in our state, right? And so it's a really important goal that I have in the work of this task force to make that happen. Mr. George, do we have members online who have questions? Not right now. Ms. Schneider.
Thank you very much for your presentation. So much of what you said demonstrated to me such a sophisticated level of knowledge about what an older worker might really want, particularly when you start thinking about the caregiving aspect.
Mm-hmm.
I still want to go to the office a couple days a week, but I cannot not worry about mom. So that's a huge point to me. You talked a little bit about some of the public-private partnerships that you've done. Could you talk a little bit more about that? I'd especially be interested in strategies for employers who are thinking about how do I put something like that together?
Dr. Caskey.
Thank you for that question. Right now, workforce, it's called WIOA, is up for reauthorization. It's a federal program that supports workforce engagement. It's through the Department of Labor. They have lots of programs. Lots of these programs are geared to, for example, bring veterans back into the workplace, bring people who are incarcerated back into the workplace. They haven't thought about the aging population yet. And these programs are given to state governments, and then those state governments turn around and come up with creative ways to get their employers to do things. Now, one would be a tax credit or an ability to we had this conversation yesterday. What happens with someone who's involved with an informal caregiving relationship, their parent, their spouse, is it exhausts them if they maintain their work? 40 hours a week plus coming home, okay? How can we give employers protection to let that person have 20 hours a week off? What can we do to pay that person, right? That's another strategy out there, is cash, money follows the person type programs, which also extend to how do we pay an informal caregiver? Because if I don't feel that pressure to work full-time anymore, or if I know my employer is going to support me doing it, that changes this relationship completely. AARP, we're working on developing this year. This is a priority for them to establish platforms that would support employers. So they're your advocacy group out there that's most involved with this. Besides tax credits, we talked in Iowa. This is a bigger one. This is one of those double-back bowls one. But you may have a pension system here in Minnesota that rewards people to retire around age 55 or so. And we have it in Iowa where the magic number is 88. What that means is your combination of age and years of service, you hit a max point on how you get paid out. And people go into these jobs knowing that. And then they leave at age 88 or 58. Worked 30 years, I quit. We had a hospital administrator call us and said, I want to learn more about your project. We said, why? She said, because one of my nurses, they're a public or county hospital, we all have those, retired on me. She didn't tell me. I didn't have any formal mechanism to discuss this. She went away for a few months, and I was so in need of staff. Guess what I ended up doing? I hired her back. But I had to hire her back through a staffing agency that wasn't located in Iowa because of the way these pension payouts work. Now I'm paying the same person to do the same job, and I'm paying 20% more. That's a problem. So we are now in conversations with the IPERS program, Iowa Public Education Retirement System, public employees, sorry. And so you have to have hard conversations with those folks. I understand these folks have earned their pensions, but we need to think about making adjustments so if they want to, continue working. To your point about county governments, one of my favorite projects has been Pitkin County in Colorado. Aspen, yeah, there you go. It's Aspen and Snowmass, right? They can't afford younger people to come in and replace the older folks who are retiring from their Parks and Recs department. So we've had to come up with all these strategies because out of their 400 county employees, about 160 of them already are over the age of 55. What are we doing to extend them, continuing after the benefits get paid out, after they reach their max? So we've talked about giving them housing options, right? Because housing goes along with employment. So they have housing developments there in Aspen that have been allocated for these sorts of opportunities. If you work for us another 5 years, you can continue living in this particular housing development we have. Lots of different things we could do, and I'd be happy to share more of those.
We would welcome those suggestions. If you would be happy to send us those by email at a later date, that would be wonderful. And also, I think some of the research that you have done, if you would be willing to provide us those papers to read, I would appreciate that too.
Absolutely.
Ms. Schneider, did you have a follow-up?
No, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you again, sir. Very informative.
Ms. Foley?
I just had a couple observations. Well, question, and I do like the idea coming from communications area, using age-appropriate images. You don't see those in a lot of publications, so that's a great idea to use it there. When you said you built websites and nobody came, where were you promoting those websites? Or how were you using those websites, those 3 state websites?
So the websites are there for people to do that AAA. So what we have been doing is sort of what we call guerrilla marketing. We will get lists from, oh, he's not there anymore. We will go to the chambers of commerce or the counties of government. We will get lists and we'll just email people. And we'll say, hey, are you interested in learning more about the aging workforce? That's as sophisticated as we've been. Once they get in, say, yeah, I'm interested, We bring them to the website. Now, the other nice thing about our project, instead of me coming and gobbling up 3 hours of your morning, which is a typical consulting strategy, and dumping a lot of information on you and leaving, you come to our website and we let you surf around. So that's the awareness part. We want you to go to hear the stories. We took narratives from employees in Colorado, we put them on the website. So you can hear about intergenerational mentoring. Someone mentioned an engineering firm. Colorado, there's an engineering firm we worked with that manages the snow melt. I had no idea. But right in the spring, those towns on the western slope are in high risk for getting flooded. And they need engineers to manage the water system. Well, this woman came to one of our seminars and she said, you know, this head engineer, I always thought he's like 48. I went into his record. It turns out he's 62, right? Because younger people don't always know. And so she had to start thinking about, how do I make intergenerational transfer? How do I get this guy to start sharing his knowledge with the rest of my staff? So we made that story a feature on our website. So you go on the website, you get excited, we hope. Then you take those self-assessments, and that lets you know, okay, here's where we go next. And then that's where we come back and kind of pick you up and say, okay, since you're really most interested in caregiving, let's go to this. So it's sort of a guided. Let's go to this section of the website and let's look at what other employers have done to support elder caregiving. And it takes us about 5 or 6 meetings to make this all happen. That's now that we figured that out, we can do this, what we call cohort training. It'll take 6 months. And we figure about 2 hours a month for an HR person or an employer to go through this program.
Thank you. One more question.
Sure.
You kept mentioning the AARP pledge. What exactly is that? I don't know what that one is.
AARP pledge is pretty basic. You go to AARP, it signs up and it says, I pledge to be an employer who thinks about the aging workforce, is inclusive. AARP in turn does a basic screen to make sure you don't have a history of age discrimination or other issues that might not want you to be in their fold. And then they give you a pledge, now a certification that says you are in fact an AARP certified pledge employer. What's nice about it is all this information I'm throwing at you, they have it too. And you go to their program, they have a training about once a quarter, once a semester. And all the AARP pledge employers from across the country can dial in and just listen. So the last one, they had a session on how AI is transforming the workplace for older adults. So it's not as directed and specific as what we do in AIMS, but they're a great resource. So one, they give you that sort of public visibility that you're friendly towards older persons. 2, they become a resource for you as you move forward.
All right, thank you very much. We will conclude this conversation, but I am so thankful for your making the time to travel and be with us today, and for the great work that you're doing at the University of Iowa. So
Thank you very much.
thank you so much. We will next hear from the University of Minnesota in the Careers Initiative, Advanced Careers Initiative presentation. Welcome, Dr. Schaefers, and when you're ready, if you'll state your name for the record and begin your testimony.
Thank you very much. Is this on?
Yes.
Okay, great. Kate Schaefers, University of Minnesota. We've heard a lot about statistics, demographics, shifts, and some creative ideas. What I'd like to do is just dive a little deeper into some of the nuances of some of these trends, as well as to look at some of the barriers that people face as they look at longer work lives. Now, we know that we have an aging demographic in Minnesota. We also have an aging workforce. What's driving that is partly demographics, but it's also changing work patterns. And what we're seeing is that people are staying in the workplace longer, partly because they want to, as Dr. Heskey just told us, but also because they need to. So when we look at how our later boomers as well as Gen Xers who are coming up, how prepared financially they are for retirement, the reality is that we're going to have increasing numbers of people who need to stay in the workplace because they financially cannot afford to retire. And we're seeing that when we look at the fastest growing demographic of older workers are people 75 plus. So I think this is a big issue for us to think about how people are prepared for retirement that's going to be coming at some point in their lives, but also how we can manage a workplace that is going to also be welcoming to people of ages that go beyond maybe where we have had people in the workplace, not only to welcome them, but also to see them for what they are, which is a key demographic that's going to help us as a state as we look at what our productivity is going forward, because we need these workers in the workplace. So I'd like to just talk a little bit about barriers, because we know working longer is often very good for the individual as well as the workplace. But unfortunately, people do face significant barriers as they look at needing to stay into the workplace. So some of the barriers include sometimes the jobs are just too physically demanding, and people's bodies cannot continue to do that work. You know, I was part of a legislative task force that went on listening tours around the state, and we went to Marshall, Minnesota, and one of the most profound statements was a farmer who stood up and said, "You can't wrestle a sow if you're old." And so we know that some jobs you need physical strength for, you need physical endurance. And I'm going to talk a little bit about solutions to that issue when I talk more about what we can do. We also know that people leave the workforce because they have health issues. And so they may need to be leaving early because they just physically cannot continue to work. And we also know that people leave the workforce because of caregiving, whether it's caring for young children or caring for older adults in our lives. And I am going to talk more about that. But I do want to say that each one of those disproportionately impacts our BIPOC communities, and it contributes to the disparities rates of older adults as they look at retiring into those years. So when we look at financial stability as people enter those retirement years, we see disparities there. So we did talk about ageism in this conversation. There is certainly ageism that people face. We know that for older adults, AARP had a study that said 2/3 of workers age 45 and older reported having seen or experienced age discrimination in the workplace. We also know that for people who are older adults who are laid off from jobs, it is a very difficult process of getting reemployed. They often have lost wages, lost earning power, and stepping out of the workforce prematurely puts them in financial peril. And so we need to help them navigate those waters. The majority of them who do return to the workplace return for lower pay. And so again, you know, as people are planning for those retirement years, when they are laid off before they are financially ready, it can really wreak havoc on finances for families. And so they overrepresent our long-term unemployed. They're less likely to find stable employment and more likely to face age discrimination as they're applying for jobs. And so, you know, as our previous speakers spoke about, just, you know, resumes that show an older age are definitely discriminated against. Research supports that. So I want to talk about some solutions and some things that we may want to think about. So one of the areas that I think is critically important as we look at older workers and helping them get beyond some of these barriers is thinking about how we support family caregivers. Minnesota is home to 530,000 family caregivers, and they are providing unpaid care valued at more than $10 billion. That's an AARP figure. We are also seeing people step into that caregiving role at a time when we have a shortage of direct care workers in Minnesota. So the importance of that family caregiver is all the more important and salient as we look at people needing to step in and care for older loved ones as they age. Also, caregiving is often happening during prime working age, during that earning time. And especially for women, we see this as being a big issue. So women who are caregivers, men who are caregivers as well, they're often in that sandwich generation. They're caring for young children as well as caring for older adults. And for 60% of them, they're also in the workplace. And so they're juggling very intense lives. They have a lot of things going on. The average working caregiver provides about 18 hours per week of unpaid care. while holding down a job. 61% are juggling caregiving and a job. And they are also raising children. So this is a big issue. And oftentimes what we see is family caregivers adapt their work lives to provide this care. Some are forced out of the labor market to care for a family member, which has also lost income for that caregiver over the course of their working lives. They're giving up career opportunities and their own long-term financial and physical health. And so caregivers, family caregivers, are essential for our caregiving system. They provide vital care. We need them, especially at a time where we have an aging demographic coupled with shortages in the paid caregiving space. And so we now know that this is a big issue to try to help keep these family caregivers working. Minnesota did pass Paid Leave Act, and that is one area where it's a tool that can help family caregivers stay in the workplace. I know there's a lot of nuances in trying to work out the details on that, but I do think that that is a step in the right direction if we look at supporting family caregivers. We also may want to think about financial assistance for caregivers. The average family caregiver spends about $7,000 out of their pocket to pay for caregiving responsibilities and to help their loved ones. And so we also know that some populations, again, are disproportionately impacted by the financial burden of paying for things out of their pocket. Latinos, African Americans, and younger caregivers also have the struggles with that. So thinking about how do we financially support them. And then a big piece also is the workplace and employer education, helping managers understand what it is to be a family caregiver, having employee resource groups around family caregiving or aging, building a caregiver-friendly culture, and then also offering flexible work arrangements, working from home, reduced hours with benefits, flexible scheduling. All of these things can help keep people in the workplace, which is better for them as well as it's better for us as a society. Another area where we could look at some growth and potential is supporting alternative work options. And so we also need things like better on and off ramps to jobs. So when someone can no longer physically do a job, let's find ways to keep them employed doing things they can do. Or when someone is needing to maybe downshift in some of their responsibilities, let's help them do that. And it can accommodate workers while also keeping them working. And I think there have been some innovations going on in that space, and I think that would be something to look at, like how do we build those better on and off ramps to sustained work. Support self-employment, and I know that this has come up already in this conversation, but we know that for a lot of older adults, especially those who are laid off, they are looking for self-employment as the most viable route for them to earn an income. And it takes many forms: independent contractors, business owners, independent consultants, freelancers, gig jobs. All of these are self-employed jobs. And so I think our workforce centers could focus on how we help people navigate that. There is certainly a skill set that comes with self-employment, with being your own boss, with starting a business, so resources as well as understanding how to access funding. But there's also a challenge for people connecting with those kinds of flexible opportunities. So if someone is wanting to do self-employment, if they're wanting to be a contractor, how do they connect with work? So finding better ways to help build those connections and help them support themselves as they look at those for options. And I do think finding ways to support work for a lifetime is also really important. You know, as one of our speakers mentioned, you know, we're looking at 100-year lives with our youngest people who are born today. And so how do we also recraft work so that it's sustainable across longer lifespans? And, you know, I know that we have looked at work, we've looked at, we've talked about the 3 boxes of life, where we go to school, we get educated, then we enter the workplace and we work, and then we leave the workplace and retire. Well, this does not work in today's world, and it's not going to work in tomorrow's world. That today people have to look at ins and outs of the workplace. They have to look at retraining across their careers. And so trying to help people find work that fits for different life stages. Being able to downshift into a different kind of role when life is busy with other things can be really helpful. Being able to look at workplace flexibility, more control over the workplace, benefits for part-time work could also help people stay in the workplace longer. And then the third area that I want to mention is expanding access to retraining and skill building. So just like we can't expect all of our education to come in the first 18 years of life, or 22 or 24, however long it takes us, we need to also prepare people to continue to look at retooling across their careers. We're seeing tremendous change in our workplace due to technology, due to AI that we can expect more and more. We all have to stay up to date and keep our skills fresh. And so knowing that we're going to have to continually be retooling, we need to make it easy for people to do that. So offering things like helping people get those skills, so short-term focused skill building training in high demand areas, expanding access to those kinds of things. Offering career change assistance. So people are often navigating these without roadmaps as they look at trying to go into new kinds of roles, especially for our older workers and the workers who are coming after them. So offering some assistance and helping people make good decisions about retooling. Is it worthwhile to go back to school and get a certificate? Is it going to open up more opportunities? Helping people navigate that. And also, I'll just add, because I know that we did talk about Social Security and some of the caps, I think also people need help in deciding when to start Social Security, because some of those caps come from when you take Social Security before your full retirement age. And so then people are penalized when they work above a certain number of hours. Once you reach full retirement age, you can work more hours. And so, you could talk about that as a policy issue, but it could also be a strategy issue when we look at how older adults look at when to take Social Security and what is going to be most beneficial for them. We also know that if you wait till age 70 to take Social Security, your benefit is significantly higher. So it's a complicated system that people are often navigating with increased need to work and continued work. And the system and the way that we look at it is not set up to help people understand consequences of some of those decisions. I'd also like to suggest that we could also be creative in things like apprenticeships and internships with older adults in mind. And so we know that, a lot of young, newer professionals turn to internships to gain practical experience and to bridge their way into new work. Well, for older adults who may leave the workplace, and actually all of these things I'm saying apply to people of all ages. So when we talk about benefiting older adults, I want to also just stress that these benefits people at any age. But there's this concept of a returnship. So if someone leaves the workplace for caregiving responsibilities or for any reason, a lot of times getting back into the workplace is one of the big barriers, because there is a lot of discrimination against people who have stepped out of the workplace. A lot of assumptions about their skills being outdated or they're not serious about work. So doing things like returnships, which is an internship for an experienced person, might help, and originally developed for trying to tap in parents who may have left the workplace to care for children. I think it could have much broader applicability. And so I want to just end there with just opening it up for questions. I think there's a lot of room for us to rethink how we work, to work with employers to help them tap this valuable pool of the labor force, and then also to help people manage increasingly long and complicated life that often comes with caregiving and other responsibilities. So let me stop there.
Dr. Shavers, I appreciate your going at a fine clip to help us make up the time that I have slip. So thank you for that. I love the idea of this returnships. I've never heard that phrase before, and it's so applicable to what we're talking about with the caregiving experience. I am going to ask, because you are local, if we could potentially invite you back at another time to do a little deeper dive. And then that way I can also go on to the Office of Employment for Economic Status of Women, if you don't mind.
Yes.
And I appreciate all of the extra materials that you've provided to us as well. Are there any quick questions that we might have for Dr. Schaefers at this moment? Ms. Schneider.
Thank you, Dr. Schaefer. I just was thinking when you were talking about people who also are in a situation where they're an older worker and now they're forced to retire because of whatever reason is in place, and the loneliness factor. And we know what the research has told us about people who are lonely and isolated, and they tend to have increased medical needs, et cetera, et cetera. I think it's an important piece for us to remember when we're thinking about changing the system. We may also be impacting the healthcare system for years to come. So thank you for your presentation. That's all, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Schneider. And thank you so much, Dr. Schaefer. We really appreciate you being with us. And now we will have Heather Heyer from the Director of the Office of Economic Status of Women. When you're ready, if you will begin your presentation. State your name for the record and begin your presentation.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair and members. My name is Heather Heyer, and I'm the Director of the Office on the Economic Status of Women at the Minnesota Legislative Coordinating Commission. Today, I'm here to talk about how there will be more women and fewer resources, how a lifetime of inequality adds up for women in Minnesota. So just briefly, I wanted to mention my office has been dormant for a number of years. I just started in November, and this is our statute, and what we do is provide information and statistics on women to members of the legislature and the public. So let's get into more numbers, because that seems to be the theme of the day, and we'll cover some data on Minnesota women. So first of all, women are just slightly outnumbered by men across the state. There's 50.2% men overall and 49.8% women. And we've seen this earlier, but this is the population pyramid for Minnesota in what happens to be Vikings colors, but there are also women's suffrage colors for those who follow along. And what we see as we get to the age bracket of 60 to 64-year-olds, that's when we see the flip in Minnesota, with there being more women than men. And that holds all the way up when you get to the top bracket there of 85 plus. It's almost 2/3 more women than men. So overall, this means of our older population, it's a majority of women. Just want to state that very clearly. In terms of resources for women as they age, we can see that the median household income for female-headed households is $72,900 compared to male-headed households, which earn $84,000. For Minnesotans that are living below the poverty line, it is nearly 11 in 100 women compared to 9 in 100 men. And that gets even worse when you add the age factor. So for Minnesotans over the age of 65, it's nearly 12 in 100 women compared to 8 in 100 men. So that is a stark number. And why? Why is this the case? Well, there's this thing called the gender wage gap. Also just the wage gap that you hear about commonly. And across the country, that number is 81 cents that women make to a man's dollar, or 84 cents rather. And in Minnesota specifically, it is 81 cents. And that research is coming from this really, truly wonderful document that is linked in the presentation that I encourage everyone to review, because it is extremely comprehensive. So this is the 2024 Status of Women and Girls in Minnesota that is produced by the Women's Foundation of Minnesota and the Center for Women, Gender, and Public Policy at the Humphrey School. It covers, again, it's like almost 60 pages long, and there's 4 main categories that it is reviewing, including economics, safety, health, and leadership is the 4th category. But this is a deeper dive and look at the gender wage gap that we have in the state of Minnesota. And this highlights that there are real issues when we look at women of color and what that gap is. So there are greater disparities for women in color. With Latino women making only 57 cents to the dollar, Black women making 62 cents, Native American women making 64 cents, Asian American women make 72 cents, and white women making 82 cents. So those are really stark disparities when you consider the racial demographics. And over a lifetime, this also has great impacts. And this is a loss of lifetime earnings of nearly $1 million for Black, Latina, and Native American women. For Asian women, it's about $740,000, and for white women, it's almost $500,000 of lifetime earnings loss. Gonna let that sink in for a second. So this, of course, is correlated with Social Security income, and the average annual Social Security that women over 65 receive. In 2021, it was $14,000 compared to men that received $18,000. And I just wanted to plug this because this is going to be very helpful, but in 2023, the Minnesota Secure Choice Retirement Act was passed, and this provides for private sector employees with an opportunity that employees can have a savings plan or a Roth IRA, I think it is, that is run by the state. So for private employers that otherwise wouldn't have a type of savings. So this is a really big deal because we've heard this before from other presenters today that we don't have the same retirement savings. So that is super helpful. And then gearing more towards women in retirement age and those that are living with a spouse or not, it stays about the same in the categories of 60 to 64-year-olds. But as with life expectancy changes, we see that starting to change with women living by themselves at a rate of 55% compared to men at 30% when they reach the age of 85. So a lot of changes are happening over those years. Women are living alone. At the same time, women are the majority of long-term care facility residents. Women comprise 70% of residential care communities. They are 60% of short-term nursing home residents and 68% of long-term nursing home residents. And we know you've heard this already, but the cost of these facilities is astronomical. And you've also heard this before, but women are more likely to be caregivers than men. 6 in 10 caregivers of people aged 50 or older in the US are women. This can lead to taking time off from paid employment to provide for a cared loved one. And again, the sandwich generation, it may be at both ends of the spectrum where you are caring for both young ones at home and older adults as well. Additionally, Minnesota women make up over 75% of the employees in healthcare, personal care, and service occupations. And really specifically, the direct healthcare workers in Minnesota are 84% female, 62% white, and earn an average hourly wage of $16 an hour. So these are people that are providing care in homes and in nursing facilities, long-term care facilities, predominantly female and quite diverse. If you think about the demographics of the state, we're around 78% white overall, so you can see that this population is much more diverse and not earning very much money either. So a lot of numbers and info for you there, but wanting to highlight that women are the majority of seniors in Minnesota. And as a result, almost all of these aging issues have a greater impact on women. So women have less income and less retirement savings compared to men. So I encourage you to continue to focus on policies that impact women throughout their life. And happy to answer any questions as well.
I want to thank you for being with us, and I'm glad that your office has been refunded and that we are able to have these important statistics and to make sure that as we're driving policy at the state, that older Minnesotans and women are included in all of those conversations, whether it's housing, employment, transportation, all of it. So I'm excited for your advocacy there. Members, do you have any questions for Director Heyer? Okay. at this moment. We know where you reside, so we will be able to, I'm referring to your office, so we'll be able to call on you as we do this important work going forward. And we would ask for your a review of our draft report and where you think we need to include policies. We would welcome hearing from you as well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being with us today. And members, we are going to try to conclude on time. Our task force is getting ready to do some of our public listening sessions in July and August. We will need the members of the public to please help us push out that message and to make sure that we have an opportunity to be as inclusive and as broad in that discussion as possible. It will not, those will not be meetings where we take any formal action. We cannot have a quorum present at those meetings, so there will be fewer members of our committee there, but we will all be reviewing and listening to the discussions that come from those meetings. Mr. George, is there anything I'm forgetting?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't believe so. Just our next meeting, next official task force meeting is Tuesday, June 18th, 10 a.m. in Capitol G23, the other room.
The other room that we sometimes meet in at the other end of the building. So, and we are doubling up these meetings in these next few months as we get ready to prepare our report, our draft report. Mr. Heller, I see that you have your hand up. If you would like to come to the dais and let us know what it is you would like us to know.
Hi, members of the Legislative Task Force on Aging. Mr. Heller here. Would the record reflect that I unofficially represent the twice exceptional and print disabled? I come back to report that the last set of documents was corrected by Jim Melby at the LCC. I appreciate that, Jim. The second part, these documents, once again, are not fully accessible with the required softwares. Unless you create a motion for this committee that you make this stuff checked before they submit it, especially people that are using federal dollars already, that they would agree to fix them themselves instead of hiring people at the legislature to do that. Thank you again for this opportunity to speak on digital accessibility. And I would like to mention on your survey, does not mention digital accessibility, just accessibility. I would suggest a motion to put digital in there since I bring it up multiple times. Thank you again for those considerations, this opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Heller, and we'll look into that and see what we can do to make that more digitally accessible for individuals. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. Okay, and Representative Selesnikar. Representative Selesnikar, you have your hand up?
Yes, thank you. And, thank you for the presentations that everybody did today. One of my observations of something I think we need to consider, to the point that was made on what type of photos are used when we're talking about aging for disabilities and all people in Minnesota, I think something we should consider for this task force is the importance of having intergenerational photos. I think that they need to show children all the way to the 100-year-old, because from my experience the last 40 years of working as a working mom and having my children at the nursing home with me and at the assisted livings, that exposure is so important for children to, when we live all across the country now as families, to be exposed. And we're always in our own pocket. When you have school-age children, you're at the schools. When you need nursing home care, you know something about that. But I think the more we're all together intergenerationally for programs, it helps our programming for aging seniors in the communities, when we're looking at getting retirees to volunteer, to help read. We have teachers that have retired at 55 that have tremendous backgrounds that could help us, close the reading gap so we can get caught up after the pandemic. We have so much talent and people wanting to work and getting them back in. And the other thing I think we need to look at is people that maybe have been out of the workforce for a few years and let their licenses go as nurses. as teachers, everyone that's licensed, the rigmarole that you have to go through to become licensed again when you've done this career for 25, 30 years is sometimes just prohibits them from re-entering the workforce. And I think that our committee needs to look at that seriously, to remove those barriers for people that have served with this knowledge base for so long, to get them back as LPNs. I had nursing assistants that worked for me and nurses that were 80, that were completely capable and competent. And so it shows us what can be done. And so I encourage us to look at those things. And my only other comment is on the issue of ageism. I think it's something for us to remember that ageism doesn't just potentially happen at 55 and older. I'm in that classification now, but when I took my first job in 1991, it existed then. After 4 years of experience as a nursing home administrator in my assistant administrator role, I wasn't eligible. I applied for the administrator job, but I didn't meet the civil service requirements of 7 years of experience. So even though the employees and the community and I was probably had the most ability, knew the facility, knew the residents, knew the families, and had performed, I was ineligible to become the administrator, simply because I didn't have 7 years of experience. And I think as some of those parameters change, we will be able to use the skills and abilities for people throughout their entire tenure. So thank you.
Thank you, Representative Selesnikar, and I do think the expedited renewal process might be something that we could look into and talk with the licensing folks about that. And with intergenerational photos, I think we always have to be careful how we use children in photos, but I agree with you. To promote intergenerational connection is very, very important. So thank you for all the great sharing of the experiences that you've had in this long-term care world as well. So I always appreciate hearing from you. Any other comments from members? With that, I will invite the public to check our website for our next date and time, location, and for any other updates that we have. Please encourage your community members all across the state to fill out the survey form so that we know what their experience is in aging in Minnesota. And with that, members, we are adjourned.